Recording in progress.
All right, so welcome back to Think Differently. Today we are talking about my first quarter of 2025, specifically a behind the scenes look at my business. And I'm going to talk, it's a little bit of a blend between January to April in terms of the actions that I took and the things that I'm sharing that I did or changed or stopped or whatever. How do I want to say this? So we're talking about, it's really like a Q1 behind the scenes in my business, but you're going to hear me a little bit flex into April because life doesn't work exactly by quarters, right? So you're going to hear me talk a little bit about that, but most of what we're going to talk about today is Q1. I had, January was my largest sales month ever, and Q1 was my largest sales quarter ever. On the heels of Q3 last year was my biggest cash quarter ever. And I did a live last year at the end of the year. I did like a year in review, another behind the scenes look at what really just sort of the whole year in my business and some of the stuff that I did the same, what I changed, what I tweaked. A lot of it was tweaks and adjustments. And in that one, I really shared that my Q3 of last year was also a sprint. So it was my biggest cash quarter ever, and it was also a little bit more of a sprint. I worked a lot more back then, or I worked a lot more in that quarter than I had previously that year. And I've been really playing, this is a little bit of a topic for a different day, but I've been really playing for the last year or so with my capacity. I highly recommend that you do this regularly. Look at how you're spending your time, look at your schedule, what your capacity is, especially if you're like me and you have a one-on-one business model, because the more efficiencies I build behind the scenes in my business, the more space I have to open up another coaching spot, because there is one-on-one is scalable, and one-on-one is a beautiful model to make good money, and I definitely want to stand for that. And every model has some version of a cap or a limit because of your capacity. And so when you are a service provider, for example, a lot of my clients are coaches, therapists, service providers. That is just a really, really important part of how you can scale, because your time is and your energy is your differentiation. And so all that is to say, for a while now, I have been really playing with and testing what is my capacity and what is my capacity for client service and client spots if I change this behind the scenes, or what is my capacity for client service and client spots if I change that behind the scenes, right? And so that's just been, again, it's a big piece of scaling in general, but it's been one of my top priorities for more than a year. And so what's interesting is, if you go check the link to the replay, you'll see, if you just go to the whole blog, you can scroll down and grab, I think it was the last one we did in December, and it says behind the scenes of my business in 2024. So that's a really interesting sort of companion piece to today, because I talked a lot about playing with that capacity and testing that capacity. The only way you can test your capacity is to do more, right? And so I really played with that. Well, this year, I was diagnosed with a minor, I'm fine, I'm perfectly fine, minor health condition. It's also temporary, at the end of January. And it required me to basically do the opposite, to pull back and to go, okay, we are in the opposite of a sprint. How are we going to run the business given this situation that I knew was going to affect me for a few months? So that's what we're talking about today. And basically, I made more money by working less, is essentially sort of the story. But there's a lot of people, that's generally what scaling is at some level, right? Your income is, and your revenue is outpacing your capacity or the hours that you're expending, right? Everything that you're doing is going further. So that's what we're talking about. But you see people say this, like work less and make more. But like I really today, if you've never met me before, I'm so in for the big wins. I'm so in for doing work you love. I'm so in for making good money doing work you love. Those things go together. They do not have to be one or the other. And I'm also so in for the real behind the scenes story of things. And think differently. So much of my intention here is to share what's really, like what that really looks like, because I could glamorize that I made more working less, but the truth is I had to deal with a health issue. That was not fun and glamorous. And the win for me, I'm absolutely celebrating the money. I'm so thrilled that I had my biggest sales quarter ever. And that alone would not have made me as happy as it makes me to know that it's because I have a really healthy business that's really sustainable, that I was able to make a few changes that we're going to talk about today and still make good money while I was working at, like, really honestly almost half capacity, almost half the number of hours. And so I'm going to talk again about, like, and those were not some easy decisions. I'm not going to pretend like that was fun, and I'm not going to pretend like they were easy decisions, but it was 100% worth it. And I've built so much more trust in myself and my business than ever, because when the shit hits the fan, if you can just keep running, and I would have been very happy if I had just maintained my income, honestly, versus grow it, which I did both. But the win under the win, right? There's like the surface level, yay, I'm absolutely celebrating this quarter. But the bigger win is this is a longer term celebration of sustainability and ongoing compounded, like, interest and energy and money making ability of the business because of some of the things that I did. And so if you take nothing else away, I want you to know that. And I want to also say, like, I've got a client right now, we're planning for her maternity leave, right? So I kind of want to say, like, one of the lessons is, like, you can make more money in any season. And there's trade-offs, right? She's deciding that she's actually going to take a proper maternity leave and not be working for a certain amount of time. And so she will not be making money during that time. And that is also correct, right? And so I just think it's really, there's a lot of narratives out there that are confusing, right? To say, like, well, she should be able to make money in her sleep while she's on maternity leave. Well, her business, she also has a one-on-one business model. Like, it's not set up for that, but you can still set it up to manage a maternity leave, right? To make more before and after, to set up your schedule in a way that supports you. It's all trade-offs. And so again, I think the final thing I want to say here, caveat-wise, before I jump into, like, the nuts and bolts of what I did and didn't do, is please do not hear this and say, great, copy paste, I'm going to copy Laura's business and go do the same thing, right? I know that sounds sort of Captain Obvious, but I think it's just really, really important to really look at, when I was in graduate school, I have a master's in organization development, which nobody knows what that is. It's basically behavioral science and psychology mixed with business. And what we used to do is take, like, so much of our homework was like, here's a business case. Like, here's what's going on with this business. Here's what's going on in the environment, right? And the industry. Here's what's going on in their marketing and their sales. Here's what their revenue looks like. It's dipped. Why? Do you know why? Why? What precipitated that? Did it come from something they did yesterday? Did it come from something they did a quarter ago? Did it come from something they did 2 years ago? Why? Why are all these things? And what would we recommend that they do? And what would then change in the business? Like, if you change something over here, something over here is going to change, right? So understanding that holistic picture of a business. And so my invitation to you is to really look at my business today through the lens of a case study, not through the lens of you or me, right? And that every decision I made is what everybody should be doing. But the lesson here is, the more you can learn what works for your business. And so what you're going to keep hearing me say is, this was the right decision for me because this is what works for me and my business. And I've been in business for 7 years, 7.5. I know what works for me and my business. And I know, even though every year that might tweak and adjust over time, I just know what works for me. And my job for the last 7 years, and one of the skills that I'm always working with my clients to help them cultivate, is to do just that, to know, to not just know, but to learn how to run your business, to know what works well for you, for your personal work style, for your audience, for your business, for your lifestyle. so that when you're making changes, you really are doing it from that lens of what makes the most sense for me and for my business right now in this season, right? So that's why Q3, I made a very different decision. I sprinted. Q1, I did the exact opposite and pulled back. So again, please do not copy paste my business. I'm not trying to say this is for you, but this is what works for me. And so please look at it from that lens. And then of course, anything that resonates, or even like the essence of something, a decision that I've made, of course, please take that and run with it and apply it to your business. But that's really your job, is to keep learning how to take anything that you're learning and apply it to your business at this moment, or to decide that it doesn't apply, right? Okay, please ask questions as we go. Oops. I just want to open up the chat so that I can see. Okay, great. All right. So a couple things. I'm just going to share my health situation very, very, very briefly, because it's a very long story. I'm going to try to keep it short, and I don't think it's I'm actually happy to share more about that on another day. Very, very briefly, I have had some intermittent or sporadic challenges with low energy levels for on and off for the last couple of years. And I've tried a bunch of different things. Some things have helped, some things haven't. And so it was right about summer, I think, of last year, where I just kind of realized that what I had been doing was only getting me so far, and it was time to call in some other guns, the big guns, to ask for some different help. So luckily I found a beautiful dietitian / nutritionist to help me. And basically, long story short, I was diagnosed with a severe mineral deficiency, specifically sodium, magnesium, and potassium, and zinc, very, very, very low in some of those very basic, you cannot live without those. Very, very basic minerals for a lot of different reasons, one of which is that I live in the tropics, and the food that's available here, while for the most part is good, it's inconsistent. And so a lot of the minerals that I was getting when I lived in San Francisco and I had access to anything and everything all the time, I was getting a lot of that from greens. Greens are less available right now, as an example, and so I need to shift to some things, to supplementing some things like potatoes or other things that are available, right? So really it's about changing my diet, temporarily changing my workout schedule, because I was using energy that I didn't have for my workouts, and then a lot of supplements and things to get myself back up and running. So long story short, when I was diagnosed and started taking the new supplements and changing my diet and doing all these things, one, it required a lot of changes in the kitchen, a lot of habit change in the kitchen. I already eat really, really well, really healthy and really clean. So I haven't had to change my diet much in 15 years. So that was actually really hard for somebody that already, it was probably a 20% change, a lot of swap outs and stuff, but that was a lot of effort. In the kitchen, a lot of meal prep, a lot of planning, a lot of changing things, changing how we shop, doubling down on some things that I just need extra of for now. And then managing that with my partner's food, right? So he doesn't eat like me. And so that was an impact. The other major impact, and the reason that I'm talking about this related to business, is she was basically like, I'm sorry to tell you that you're going to feel worse before you feel better, meaning your energy is going to drop before it comes back, because as you start to give your cells the things that it needs, it not only are you giving it the cells, minerals go in and out of your, I'm going to give you a quick, very terrible biology lesson. As minerals come in and out of your cells, they do two things. One, they provide nutrition, coming in, right? And then two, they help you detox on the way out, right? And so what was happening was my conveyor belt of bringing minerals in and out of my cells was working really slowly. And so the supplements I was taking started speeding that up, right? So I'm getting the stuff, it's good, all the stuff is going in, great. But that also meant that we were also speeding up the exit process, which means a lot of detox symptoms, which meant then you have to kind of go back and forth. And it just meant sluggish, low energy, as my body was detoxing from probably some of the things that it was just holding on to and it wasn't able to release. So 2 2-3 months of like on and off detoxing was essentially what was happening. So I was tired all the time and unpredictably so. So what do you do if you already know? Luckily, I knew the problem, right? I knew what to do about it. I was working on it and able to take action on it. So I knew it was temporary. So happy, and it was not fun. I'm not going to pretend that it was fun. And because it was unpredictable, I really had to get smart about how to plan my life and my work because I wasn't willing to just say I quit for the next 3 months, right? That was absolutely an option that I had, but I actually felt good enough to keep going. It's just I had to deal with these moments of like I cannot work I just could not work a full day. I think that's the biggest impact. Okay, so let me check my notes here. I hope that makes sense. Let me know if you have any questions. So what we're going to talk today is basically about 4 big things. What did I keep doing? I'm super simple. What did I keep doing, right? What did I stop doing? What did I adjust? Like things that I kept but I tweaked to manage my energy. And then what did I make improvements around? Which those are a little bit kind of the same, the last 2. So again, as I said, my guiding principle in making all these decisions was I've got to just get clear that I already know, luckily, I was in a position where, one, everything I did in Q1 and Q2, everything that I did last year, especially Q3 and Q4, set my business up to be able to sustain this in Q1 without a hiccup financially, right? Hiccup behind the scenes. Livingston had to change her whole schedule around. But everything that I did, and I think, if you've ever just had a moment where the shit hit the fan and you're like, okay, we got to do this differently because there's a different focus now, right? Like the amount of time and energy that I needed to rest and prepare my food drastically changed, and that has to come first before the business, or else if I'm not here, the business can't run. And so, I think the win, again, is the sustainability. So I think, one, just in terms of understanding the context of the business, it was already really good and healthy. And so had I been in a different state, I obviously would have made different decisions. And that's just really, really, really important. And I was just kept getting clear. I already know what works really well for me. So within those things, I just have to make decisions around within the priorities that I already have for my business. I have to get more clear on within those priorities, which ones are the best ones to focus on this quarter. So that was kind of my guiding principle. And so for me, for this business, quick answer is what really works for me is when I get people on calls with me. So when they have a chance to interact with me and get to know me, that's what works for me. And I think any business, right? Know, like, and trust factor is critical. You want your brand to be known. You want you to be known, depending on what you offer. But when you offer a high ticket, high touch, one-on-one, intimate container where you're helping people not just grow businesses, but grow as humans, it's a vulnerable space. Trust is everything. And you do just need to spend time with me. I will probably never let someone sign up for a 6-month coaching package with me on my website. I will probably never do that. I will always have an application process or a consult call or something. I want to know. I want to choose the person just as much as I want them to choose me. And so, again, what works for me is when people get a chance to get to know me, when I get a chance to get to know them. That's what helps me create conversions. And so that is in my business in the form of free consultation calls or discovery calls. So I kept those on the list. I do periodically, I give away, as I said at the beginning today, I give away free sessions. I do that very strategically and based on my availability. It's not just available to anyone, but those also are highly, highly, highly converting for me. And so I try to open up at least 1 or 2 free sessions a month as I'm able to, because that just continues to feed my sales pipeline and it works really well. Again, when people get on calls with me, that's what generally works well for me. And then similarly, this is like all big umbrella, get on calls with me, but events like this, right? You're here watching me, we're having a little chat. Feel free to ask me questions in the chat. this is you getting a chance to see how I think about business, how I apply these principles to my business in today's case. And then same with my Real Connections networking events. That's obviously a much larger, situation where people are all interacting with one another. But part of how I set that up is so that you get a chance to know me and I get a chance to know you. And so again, that's just what works for my business. And so my plan this whole time was, my guiding principle was, I already know what works for me, right? So within those, how am I going to prioritize my time? Does that make sense? Okay, so number one, first and foremost, my very first decision was specific to my current clients. So it was, am I good with the current pace that I'm delivering work to my clients? Like, do I need to slow down? Do I need to go to part-time? Do I need to give them a discount and take sessions away or something? Do I need to do something with the delivery? And I decided absolutely not. That was not something I was willing to do. I was not sick and struggling. So I did have energy. It was more about, I have less, I'm going to be operating at less than 100%. I know this, so I need to cut back on other things so that I can prioritize my clients first, and then these other pieces second, right? Because a lot of what we're talking about is behind the scenes. So I didn't change anything with my client service. Everybody that, and I added clients, I had new clients join as well. So my roster grew a little, my roster did grow over the course of Q1 and then again in May. And so that was a very important decision. But again, my energy, it's just so much easier for me to show up for a coaching call than pretty much anything else in my business. That is energizing to me. That is energy giving. Yes, if I do too many calls in a day, it can drain me, but, I shouldn't even say it'll drain me, but it'll make me tired. And so since I was operating, at less than 100%, I did have a little more space, I should say, between calls. So that I had maybe not a full day of calls, that I was able to spread that out. But that's really the only thing that I changed. I also offer pretty much daily support to my clients in between sessions in terms of messaging and sharing documents and reviewing things for them and things like that. And so that also continued. So that was not something I was willing to touch. And that was just the choice that I made. Again, in a different season, I might have made a different choice. So I kept that. Client calls, Basecamp. I support my clients through Basecamp, the Basecamp app. I kept my team in place. I didn't change anything there. I didn't on the deck, on the list of options was do I want to hire someone? But that's honestly pretty much a heavy lift. And at this point, anything that a new team member would have taken on would have been something from me to them. It wouldn't have been from one team member to the other. And so, that would have required me to share a lot. It just would have required more of me up front. Most of the time when you hire someone, there's a lot of work on you first, and then you get the relief after you onboard them. And so that I did not change, but I did lean on my team a lot more. And I'll talk a little bit about that, I think, if I can get to it. Kept my consultations open. I kept my free sessions, as I said, Think Differently and Real Connections. The other thing I did was I changed I pulled way back on my content. So how do I want to say this? For my marketing, I spent more time and energy on things like this and Real Connections, my networking events, and less time on my email list and social media. I still sent content out. I still delivered that. But that was I normally do 2 to 3 posts a week, 2 emails a week, and then up to 3 posts a week. That's generally my consistency. I actually don't know how many emails or posts I put out in Q1. And so that I actually thought about that as I was preparing, and then I was like, I'm not even going to go back and look, because the whole point of this is that was just not the priority. So I did put it out. It was just whatever I could get done. And so again, that was because I know that my marketing efforts operate more efficiently when I do events like this, when I do events like Real Connections, when I have a free opportunity for somebody to talk about working together. That just works better for me. It doesn't mean that social media doesn't work for me. It's just I have my priorities and I'm very, very clear, and that one went down to the bottom. It was also something that, one thing I didn't say, one of the impacts that I was having, or like side effects that I was having, was I was having a little bit of brain fog, maybe more than a little bit of brain fog, and it was really affecting my ability to like be organized and do small things. Like I would walk in the kitchen and start like making dinner, and then I would realize like I just kind of wasn't there, and I wasn't doing logistics and tiny details were really, they are not my strong suit anyway. They are not my zone of genius. And so a lot of things that were not my zone of genius, brain fog really, really affected much more strongly. Like I needed to take better client notes in my client sessions so I didn't forget anything, but that was not a hard change to make. But when it came to executing on tiny details, again, the things that are not my strong suit, it really was affecting me. And so that was kind of, I know that writing content isn't exactly a tiny detail, but it really made, it was just harder for me in that moment. My thoughts, I couldn't keep organized, like, just creating something out of nothing. It just got harder and harder for me. And so again, that was the other reason why it got deprioritized, because it's just not hard for me to show up here. It's not hard for me to show up at Real Connections. It's not hard for me to deliver, service to my clients. That's not hard for me. And again, I have clients that would probably have made the exact opposite choices. They would have been like, thank you, I want to be as introverted as possible. How do I get off of all the calls, right? So again, this is just what works for me. Getting on calls works for me because of the work that I do. It works for me because it's the way that I like to be. And it works for me because I've worked that strategy for a long time. And so it works. And I found my way to that and refined it and made it my own. Okay. So those are all the things that I kept. I stopped a lot of stuff. I had a plan to update my website copy. It's fine, but it's so old. And I had a plan, and actually had a copywriter that I was going to work with, and I put that on pause. I'll probably get it at some point this year, but it had to go off the list. Like obviously that's a huge project, and obviously, again, it's not what's working for me or working against me right now. So it came off the list very quickly. A website project came off. All speaking engagements came off the list. I had a couple people really great opportunities off the list. All collaborations off the list. Like a couple people even reached out to me to say like, I have a couple of ideas. Like I wouldn't even entertain the conversation. It was like, I can't even talk to you now about a collaboration that we might do in like Q4. Like I can't even talk to you about it. Like again, and this is also, I want to say like, in the same vein that I said, like I prioritized my calls and like giving myself that access, I also deprioritized any calls that were not those priorities. Does that make sense? So any collaborations, speaking events, any coffee chats. I used to do a lot of coffee chats. I have scaled that back over the last 12 months just because of availability, but absolutely turned it off. Like my link doesn't even work anymore. I might bring them back at a lower capacity at some point, but I turned those off because again, that was feeling like that was too many calls on my calendar. And that was that, and those were not the calls that necessarily worked for me the best, right? If I didn't have Think Differently, if I didn't have Real Connections, I might have made a different decision because those all sort of check a similar box in my strategy. Does that make sense? Yeah, and I have 3 colleagues who are like my business besties, and we have one-on-one chats, maybe once a month, once every other month, just some people who've been in business almost or longer than I have, people that I feel just different than my coach. We keep up with each other and we support each other. And I canceled all of those calls indefinitely. Like I haven't picked those back up. Again, things that were important to me, they are still important to me. These relationships are important to me, but they were just not the priority. And I would say it was about May 1st when I started feeling like I was gaining in energy as opposed to losing energy. So it really was like almost all. It was exactly Q1 plus a little bit of April. Yeah. And then this is like, I don't know if this was a hard decision for me. And it sounds like it's not related to business, but as a person who's moved to another country and I've traveled a lot and I've moved around a lot. So in my personal life, the majority of my closest friends do not live here, right? I've lived here for 5.5 years. I have friends here. But my the people I call when the shit hits the fan, I have some here, but like most of my ride or dies do not live here, which means they're virtual, which means the way that I keep in touch with them is I see them when I'm in the States, but we keep in touch, with phone calls. And so I stopped all personal phone calls except for like my parents and my sister and the kids. Other than that, and even those I had a lot less of because I just needed to preserve my energy. So again, I think that's an interesting piece of like, I kept the client calls because that felt fun and energizing to me and that wasn't hard. But had I kept all the calls, I didn't have the energy. And I specifically remember one afternoon being like, I'm too tired to talk. I'm too tired to talk. And I will say, I also, there were a few times that I moved client calls because of this. There were definitely some times where I allowed myself, like, it's not like, the client call is at 3:00, but for the most part, because I prioritized my rest, right? I changed the way that I worked. I worked a lot less. Like I pulled way back on my hours, and all these things came off my plate. I was able to then prioritize 2 calls a day was not hard for me to show up for, even if it meant I had to take a nap in between. And that was the only thing I accomplished that day. That was just considered success for that day. Okay, I think that's the keep and the stop. Oh, I missed one. The other thing that oh no, I just didn't say it. The other thing that I kept is, and it takes time and it takes brain power and it takes, I did not do this on brain fog days, but I'm pretty religious about my follow-ups. So follow-ups on sales calls, follow-ups to people who have said, hey, I'd like to work with you, but I'm not ready yet, like checking in with them periodically, depending on the situation. And because I did all the things that I did last year, I have a really, really, really healthy, full pipeline of potential clients. And again, because this is a high ticket, that's pretty typical for high ticket. People are not always like ready to start the minute that you have a sales call or a consultation or a discovery call. And so that, by the way, if you have a one-on-one high ticket offer, that's very normal. Some people are like ready to go. Hey, I hopped on a call. I'm ready to start as soon as you have, your first available spot. But that's also just as normal to have people say, I'm booking a call to think about it and to start thinking ahead, and then I'll be ready in 3 to 6 months or 2 months or whatever that is. And so because I had that, that was another priority for me, was making sure that I followed up with all of my pipeline people as I normally would have. And so I definitely batched those on the days that I felt good. I would set those up, and even if it wasn't time to send them out yet, I would schedule them for the future. And so that was another piece that, again, the writing, the sitting down and thinking, that sort of type of task, I prioritized sending my sales follow-ups instead of like writing an extra piece of content, right? As an example. Okay, and then things that I changed, I leaned in so good to my support, both at home. My partner is amazing. He generally does most of the cooking and grocery shopping. And so we had to change a whole lot there. And I really, really needed his help to think through how to execute on like changes to my diet. There was a lot of like, make sure you get this many proteins per day and this many grams of potassium and this many grams of blah, blah. And then like how we mixed and matched and created meals. That was not easy. That was not easy. That was a huge change. And so I really, really, really leaned in hard there. I leaned in really hard to my coach. Oh my gosh, she was so, so supportive and helpful in helping me make these good decisions. But I want to say too, something that I wouldn't have normally done, I leaned in to have her help me with things that I would normally do myself. So for example, there were days with my brain fog where I had a hard time planning out my week or even planning out my day. That's not a hard thing for me normally. That's just not a hard thing for me. But again, because the details were starting to be messy for me, and especially because I was changing, I'd be like, wait, what am I doing? What? I was changing. Even taking things off your plate can like sort of put you in a moment of like, whoa, where's my routine, right? And so like normally I would just plan my week by myself. Or like if I had a question about a priority that I wanted to think through with her, I would message her or bring that up in session. But like I don't use my coaching sessions to plan my day and my week. That's just not my norm. But I did little things like that. Like the question I just kept coming back to for myself mindset wise was, how can I just get more help? How can I do less of this by myself? How can I just keep leaning into the people who are supporting me and use that support in a deeper way because I really needed it. And so and the reason I did that was because there were a few weeks where I noticed like it was almost like I spent the whole day trying to figure out what to work on. And so I was like, okay, enough of this. I'm going to just plan this out and have her support me with it. And then when I feel, and then it'll just be, and then like, I didn't like even intentionally start planning it by myself again. It just happened, right? Because I just kind of came back, that part of my brain came back online and I just went back to that. But if you're ever going through something like this, like that question of like, where else can I get more help? How can I make this easier on myself? I had a checklist for my, this is ridiculous. This is my health checklist of like supplements and exercises and things that I needed to do and make sure that I did every single day. How can I just make this easier on myself? How can I decrease decision fatigue? How can I set up a system to support me in this? How can I delegate it? How can I ask for more help? Like when I put that checklist together, for example, I had my partner help me with that, right? In normal life, like if I want to make a list of my supplements, I'll just do it myself. You know what I mean? That's not something I like need help with. But in that moment, I did. And so having somebody help me think that through, all of those things helped alleviate and like manage my reserves so that I had the energy to do the resting that I wanted to do, focus on myself that I wanted to do, and the client service that I wanted to do, and the marketing that I wanted to do. So leaning into support across the board. My team, my VA, she's taken on so many more things faster than we normally would have offered her things to do. She took it and ran. And so that was really, really helpful. And then again, systems and processes. I'm pretty planful and strategic with my business, but, and I'm very, very big on having like systems and processes documented. Like this is just the boring shit, right? But it's really, really important. And so never has that been more important for me. So that's one of my biggest takeaways and things that I'm so grateful to myself and my team for everything that we've done in the last couple of years to really focus on getting those things refined and documented and updated, because there were even some things that I had written down for myself, just little checklists and things that I had my VA help me with so that I didn't forget to do certain things, right? Things that normally I don't need a checklist to do, I just do them because I remember everything. But when you're not 100%, either you don't remember everything or it takes more energy to remember everything. And so relying on some checklists, I mean, again, this is like so simple and silly sounding, but that shit saved me. I definitely would not have had my biggest sales quarter ever had I not done all that work in the previous 2 years, but also leaned into it and said, how can I make this work for me better? So we even added some systems and documentation, some new ones in Q1. And then I want to talk about Real Connections, and then I want to talk about my schedule, and then I've got a list of 5 takeaways for you. I think we can do that in 10 minutes. Let me know. You guys are quiet today. Let me know if you have questions. So the other couple changes that I made, which might have seemed counterintuitive. So I had already planned in February was the Real Connections. We celebrated it was our 2-year anniversary. And I had already planned like back in November or December that for the anniversary, I was going to do a big party and sort of like an extra promotion. And that I ran that differently. I ran stats on referrals and shouted people out who've been our top referral partners for Real Connections. I gave people spotlight. I just did things differently. And that was a big push to promote it as well. We had our biggest, we had 50 people show up, which is more than we've ever had. And it was just a beautiful, fantastic celebration. It was also really great to bring in new people into my world. And just from a reach and top of funnel perspective, it was really good for the business in that way. Got us a lot of exposure. And that was a conversation to have like 3 weeks out of like, do I have it in me to promote this the way that I wanted to, and to do, is that a thing I'm going to keep? And so ultimately I decided yes, but I made some changes. This is like a blend between schedule and Real Connections, but I made some changes in my schedule where on the days that I ran Real Connections, I had 0 other calls on my calendar. 0. Which like normally I don't like to do that to my clients, to cut a whole like 2 days off for the whole month that they can't book, but that was just what I needed. And so I definitely, had clients tell, like if I informed them like, look, if you can't find a time that works for you, we'll get creative, but it really was not a problem. Again, because I took all the other things off my calendar, so I could just really put only client calls on the calendar and nothing else. And so I kept that, right? So it's sort of counterintuitive to be like, wait, you pulled back, but then you like pushed up, for Real Connections, the anniversary. And that was, again, like 3 weeks after I was diagnosed, and pretty much instantly started having these side effects. But again, because I pulled back on other things, I was able to keep going with that. The other big change I made is I did not promote it as well as I had planned. I just did not have the ability to get as much content out the door for those 2 weeks leading up to it that I had planned. And I just let that be okay. And it worked great anyway. I also started pulling in help to help me facilitate those events. So for 2 years, I ran them by myself. I did all the breakout rooms myself. And again, the common theme here is creating space, removing decision fatigue, like doing less, like doing the same thing but with less effort and doing it better. Hopefully you're hearing that theme here. And so, like I had my VA, my partner started helping me first, and then my VA came in and she's been helping me now. So she helps me run those. She does all the like tech support in the background and puts people into breakout rooms and manages all of that stuff so that I don't have to. That has been a huge game changer. Wish I did it sooner. And then with my schedule, I've talked a lot about that. Again, I basically pulled everything off except for client calls, Real Connections, and Think Differently. And then I built in a bunch more extra buffers between client calls. Thank you, Calendly, for you can put a max number of calls per day. So I decreased that so that clients didn't overbook me, because what was overbooked for me in a given day was different for that time period. And I really just downgraded my expectations of myself. So really the way that I managed, so there's like client work and like events, right? You show up at that moment for the thing. And then all the stuff that got done, sort of behind the scenes, me sitting on my computer, including messaging clients in Basecamp, all of that got put into chunks of work blocks, like time blocks. And within that, I just kept moving time blocks around. So I didn't have any expectation of myself on what I was going to produce in that time period, other than getting back to all the clients and the amount of time that I tell them I will. Anything I was creating for like content or even like sales follow-up calls, all of that, I just removed my expectations for myself and said, when I can do it is when I can do it. And so mostly my planning for that work was just prioritizing every week and then getting to it when I could, and then checking it off. Like it was really, the other thing is I batched that work better than I normally do. But that really helped so that because I didn't know how my energy was going to be, right? That was the biggest challenge, was unpredictability. Like there were days where I was like, wee, and I like did a bunch of shit, right? And then there were days where I like, other than a client call, I did literally nothing the rest of the day. And that was all that I could do. And I made that okay. Okay. I think I've covered that. Okay, I'm gonna just quickly go through what I think are the biggest lessons. I could keep talking about this, but we're going to finish in 5 minutes. Again, I think a couple of things. One, last week's Think Differently topic was big income growth usually comes from doing less of this. You can check the replay out. And this was big changes. I think, and I went on and on that topic, so I won't like go too far down that rabbit hole today. But that's also another one if you're interested in like understanding how I think about business, or even on how I think about change. I was a change management consultant in corporate, so this is my specialty. And so one of the things that I said is, look, for a person who talks about how much I love change and pivots, and I definitely support my clients in navigating changes in their business. That's usually like what happens when they first come to me, especially if they're in the middle of a pivot. But the way that I help my clients get big income results is not from changing shit all the time. Like it's actually the opposite. And so I spent a lot of time talking about that. But today is a great example of everything that I talked about in last week's Think Differently around nothing I did was earth-shattering, right? Like I had my biggest sales quarter ever, and basically I took a bunch of stuff off my plate. I kept executing my strategy because I know it works for me, and I just kept executing, and then I picked the fruit that I had planted last year. That's essentially what I did, right? There's no secret. There's nothing earth-shattering. There was no big change. There was a big change. I changed the crap out of my schedule, right? I worked less. I took stuff off my calendar. I said no to a lot. But that was just, like, that's not big change. Like, you would maybe not have ever known this had I not told you this, because from the outside, my business looks the same. And that wasn't the point. I wasn't trying to, like, pretend like I wasn't sick or something. But I think the point is, most of the time when people sustainably grow their income like this, it's not because they've made massive changes. It's in fact because they've just stayed the course with a strategy that works, and refined it and mastered it and improved it and adjusted as they go and stayed to it. And this is a really good example of that. So that's one big takeaway I hope that you'll take away from this. 2, I said this a lot, knowing what works for you and your business in this season, right? That was really the challenge for me. Was I knew what worked for me. I knew what worked for my business. The question mark there was, what's going to work best for me in this season? How can I marry all 3 of those together and use what I know what works and let go of the rest? Which brings me to the next one, which is the 80-20 principle. Oh my gosh, it is like, this is such a perfect example of that, right? That's, I forget who came up with it, but it's basically the concept that 80% of your results come from 20% of your like efforts or actions. And so I really put that to use. So one of the things I always talk to my clients about is priorities. And that's basically this. If we understand what your 20% is in your business, and sometimes it takes time to test and iterate that and figure that out. But once you know what that 20% is that generates 80% of your results, that's literally what I did in this quarter. Like I pulled way back, I focused on the 20%, and I said, no to a lot of the 80%, and I said maybe to some of the 80%, right? So that I could really confirm every week that 20% got done, and then whatever else was a bonus, because I just knew that that was going to be what moved the needle, continued to move the needle, or even just sustained. Again, depending on my goal, by the way, my goals at the beginning of the year were to keep growing my business. And I actually, the funny thing is Q1, I I was like $1,000 shy of the goal that I had originally set, which I just rounded up and said, I accomplished my goal. Like, I'm so proud of myself. But actually, I shouldn't say that. That was my cash. I set my cash goal, which was different than my sales goal. Sales goal was sales that I made were the biggest ever in one quarter. But the cash I made was like 1,000. Actually, yeah, it was the cash I made was 1,000 over. I'm sorry, it was 1,000 over my goal. And so, point being, my goal could have been anything that I wanted it to be. And again, I might have changed. And I also just kind of, at the beginning when I made this decision, I just kind of let go of that goal. And I was like, really, my goal is just sustain the income that I have now. And if it grows, great. And if it dips a little, that's okay. But my goal was really just to stay put. Okay, not making big change, knowing what works for you. 80-20. The two more. This confirmed for me, I mean, I've been 100% clear on my business model and the fact that coaching is my one true love, like for many, many years now. But if this didn't confirm it, right? Because had I gone through a season like this, doing work that didn't light me up, that didn't energize me, I would not have been able to serve clients, or I would not have been able to serve as many clients, right? If that brain fog, right? Think about that brain fog piece where I said it really affected the details and the things that I'm not the best at, right? That's why, right? It's not like the brain fog came from my details, and like if detail was my specialty, like I would have been screwed. No, it's like that's kind of how it works. It can come for anything, but anything that is like not your thing, anytime you're debilitated in any way, or less than 100%, I should say, that's just going to make it harder and harder to execute on the stuff that's not your zone of genius. So if I had built a business around details and little things and logistics, I really would have been screwed, right? And I would have had a different setup. Everything would have been different. And so back to the opposite of that. It was just so easy for me to keep serving my clients. And I tested that out, and I definitely gave myself space to say, look, if I don't feel like I can give my clients the service that they deserve and that I'm used to giving them, then I will make a different change. But it just was not an issue. That's the most important part of my business. And so thank you to me, thank you to past me for setting up a business. And this is why it's so important for my clients when we do make big changes. It's usually because the business is not set up for you. It's not set up to align to your skills, your strengths, your genius. A new client today, we just kicked off, and her strategy is just not aligned to her. It's a great strategy. It makes a lot of sense. In some ways, it actually serves her, but it's just not working for her right now in terms of her ability to execute on it because it's not quite lined up. So we're making some changes around that. But once you have that set, it's so freeing to just keep executing on what works for you. And so again, the other takeaway is if you don't have a business model where when the shit hits the fan, you know that you'll still be able to execute, and again, had I been sick in the hospital, obviously I would not have been like serving clients, there are different things. But my point is, my yardstick for myself is always, I still need a business that does not require me to be 100% all the time. So that if I'm working in my zone of genius, I can do that at 80%. I can do that at 50%, right? And in fact, on some of my worst personal days, being able to go to work and serve a client because it serves my energy, because it puts me in flow, because it's me being of service, because it's my zone of genius, actually was therapeutically incredibly helpful and could turn my day around, right? It's not an energy drain, it's an energy give. And so building a business around that's a huge piece of the takeaway here, because all of those decisions that I made would have been different if that hadn't been the case. And then the final piece is, let this be an example for you of the both and. It's not either or. Either I can take care of my health or I can run my business, right? I wanted both. So I made that happen. I had some hard decisions. It was not easy. I had days where I was exhausted, and many days where I was exhausted, and like the words that kept coming out of my mouth, like, I'm just so tired of being tired. It was real, and I'm not going to sugarcoat that. It was not fun, and I have lots of tips if anybody is ever going through something like this. But you can have both. It just takes decisions. It just takes your ability to prioritize and focus, and everything has a trade-off. But I would make all of those decisions over again. I also have a lot of mindset tips around this that I'm going to share another time, because there was a lot of mindset stuff that came up for me, right, around this. Let me see if there's something else I wanted to say about both and. Where did it go? I have too many notes. I feel like there was something else I wanted to say about both and I don't see it on my list. Yeah, but so you can take care of your body and you can take care of your business, right? Like, I just think these are some of those sticky mindset things that can come up and can jack us up when we are running a business, and we fear of overwhelm, of overworking. If you've burnt out before, like I have, right? It's right on up there. I just think it's so easy. That's one of the first things I'll see in a client, is like where their either or thinking is operating. We all have it. Our brains do it. We like to kind of go all or nothing. Well, I can either do this or I can do that, right? And this was just such a great example of, I can take care of me and I can take care of the business. And in both cases, I made some trade-offs, right? I didn't call my friends, as an example, in my life stuff, personal life, I didn't talk to my friends as much. That was okay. I focused on the friends that I had here so that I could get out of the house when I felt good. That felt more important to me, and more feeding to me, than to be still stuck in the house when I was feeling tired and then, to be on a call. So but that was a trade-off. That I didn't like that. I didn't like that, but it was a trade-off, and it was the right decision for me, and I trusted myself to make that call. And I trusted my friends to not be mad at me. Like, I told them about it, and it was fine. And then in the business, I made other trade-offs, right? I leaned on my team more. I took things off my plate. I said no to some great collaborations, speaking opportunities, things that would have given me some great exposure. It just wasn't possible, and it was absolutely the right decision. But again, it's always trade-offs, but you can, and please don't hear this as you can do it all and you should do it all and you should add 40,000 things to your list. Work-life balance is not a thing. It's about finding, in the moment, how you're going to prioritize among all the things. Had I had children, these would have been very different decisions and conversations, right? Very, very different. And I probably would have called in for some extra help. So please just take this as, you can have what you want. You can make the decisions to get yourself what you want. It's not either or. It's not do work you love or make a shit ton of money. You can do both. It's not, you can take care of your health or you can have a thriving business. Nope, you can do both. And I just think that for me is something that I had to work on to even start this business, because I used to really ascribe to that belief of you can either make money or love what you do. And so it's just a great example of that as well. And I guess the final thing I'm going to say, if I didn't caveat this in the beginning, again, please don't hear this as you need to do more. This was not an exercise in doing more so that you can make more money, or slacking off and expecting that you will make more money. I don't want either of those things to be misconstrued. But when you have a firm foundation in your business and you know what works and you have a strategy that works for you, and sometimes that can take time to build, not to diminish that. If that doesn't feel like something you have, that's your current work. But once you have that, being able to hold to that, some of my mindset stuff was sticking with that, right? It's so much easier to think that you have to do some drastic, big, different change, right? Sticking with that and letting it work for you, right? It's like investing in the stock market. Over time, eventually it gives you that return. You make money over time. And so this is also an example of my strategy was compounding itself, because I just kept focusing on the pieces that I needed to focus on. I didn't need to do all the extra stuff. And so my final piece is, what's next for my business? I have not added in a lot of the things that I took off my list, and it's still under investigation as to whether I will. Because if I can do less with more, imagine if now, when I'm starting to feel better, where do I want the remaining hours to go? And so I'm really having some hard conversations with myself. And until well, until I'm all the way back 100%, whatever that is. I don't even know what 100% is for me, energy-wise. I'm just gonna keep some of those things off the list. And then when or if I feel like I have the capacity to add them back in, I might add them back in. But that's really sort of like the next piece is, so now what? What are we adding back in? And right now, not much. Some personal life stuff, I'm doing a lot more personal life stuff, calling my friends. But from the business perspective, I'm keeping it the same. And using those extra hours to get a little more content out the door, to do more sales calls, to do more other things, in the same bucket. Okay, I hope that was helpful. I can't remember what our next event title is, but it's up on the website. If you want to sign up for the next one, it's up there. It's the first week of June, first Thursday of June. And thank you for hanging with me. Thank you for listening. This was a long one. I think we had 20 people signed up. So I know that this topic is a good one. If you want to put your vote, send me an email or send me a note in the chat if you're live. If you want me to do more of these behind the scenes in my business, like I'm happy to be an open book and share, sort of like the good, the bad, and the ugly, and the hard decisions and the mindset stuff that goes on behind the scenes, because I think sometimes that it can be helpful. So if you like these, let me know, and I'll do another one maybe in a quarter, or when I have when I have something else or different to share. Thank you so much. Yes, behind the scenes is helpful. Okay, great. I'll keep them going. All right. Have a great day. Let me know if you have any questions. If you're on the replay, feel free to hit reply to the email and just ask me any questions you have. And I'll see you next time. Bye. Oh my God, I completely forgot. If you'd like to work with me, see, it's still there. If you're looking for a coach, if you're looking for these kinds of results, if these are the kinds of conversations you need to be having for yourself and decisions that you need to make for yourself, this is the kind of work, frankly, that I do all day, every day. Not necessarily, shit doesn't need to be hitting the fan, or you don't need to be having a crisis for you to work with me. But if you're looking for that, either to build that firm foundation that you can, make some of these sustainable decisions from, or if you've got that firm foundation and you want somebody to help you make decisions when shit hits the fan, or help you to figure out how to take that and grow it and scale it, I would love to support you. We're never going to burn you out. We're always going to align it to your lifestyle and goals and things like that. Book a free consultation. It's either if you're live, it's in the chat, and if you're watching it on the replay, it's on the same page. There's the link right there. And I'd love to talk to you, whether you're looking for a coach now, or as I said earlier, or if you're looking in the future. You can book a call when you're just ready to start planning and thinking ahead. That's absolutely a good time to call. You don't have to be ready to start now. At the moment, we are in May. I have 2 spots open to start working with me in June, and I have 1 spot open in August. I'm not taking any new clients in the month of July. So it's June or August. And I do plan ahead. I do take deposits for future dates. So if you're looking for August, I don't know about September yet, but June and August are available right now to put down a deposit if you're ready to work with me. And I have a 2-week container where we just focus on one area of your business. Generally, that's like offers, or mapping out a scaling process, or mapping out a strategy change, or any other topic that we agree is good for a 2-week time period. And then my ongoing regular program is 6 months. So if that's interesting to you, hop on a call with me. I'd love to talk to you about what it would look like to work together. And again, I will see you next week. Thanks so much. Bye.